بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد عجل فرجهم. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I start my speech to this blessed night of the birthday of the Apostle of Allah, Muhammad Mustafa. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad ajil farajahum. And Imam Jafar al-Sadiq alayhi salam, they were born in the same day. So thanks everyone who came in person or online to this event. And my talk's topic, which would be very short, would be how did the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered Medina. So I'm talking about a snapshot of the entrance to Medina. A quick timeline overview of those area. So time 0, which is the would be the 12th of the Rabiul Awwal, which was just a few days ago, was the actual Hijrah happened. And I call it 0, but it's year 1 of Hijrah. So we don't have year 0 of Hijrah, of course. So the year before that was the year 13th of Besa, or -1 of Hijrah. But afterward, you are familiar with the Hijra years. So we had the year before, we had the pledge of Bay'atul Aqaba, the pledge of Aqaba with some Ansar, like Medinans, who came to Mecca secretly to have a Bay'ah with Rasulullah. And something interesting about the Sirah of Rasulullah was that he was a man of contracts. And so like generally is portrayed by many Muslims and non-Muslims as a man of wars. But if we go deeper, we see that he has like tens of, maybe more than 60 different contracts with the polytheists, with Jews, Christians, Medinans, Meccans, tribes. So that's part we need to, so it was like more the man of diplomacy than the man of war. Having that said, the Bay'at al-Aqabat al-Awwal, the first and the second, the Bay'ah happened a few months after, the Zulhijjah, which, you know, the Zulhijjah is the last month of the year, like Islamic year, and the month after would be Muharram, Safar, and then Rabi. So the second Bay'ah was kind of paving the way for the Hijrah. So he just got the okay or the green light from the Medinan people that it is it's a good place and it's a good time and to do this Hijrah. And he, during that 3 months, he sent many of his companions forward toward Hijrah. So that few months, so the process from the first Bay'ah of Aqaba and the second Bay'ah of Aqaba, so he sent us. So he was kind of one of the last that did the Hijrah to Medina. Many people think the opposite, think that the Rasulullah went first to Medina, and after months, like others joined him, but it was the opposite. So many families went forward ahead of time. So, and the Hijrah happened at the time of Rabiul Awwal. And I will go to more to the detail. And you know, the first of the Rabiul Awwal was the night that he left Mecca, and that's the Laylatul Mabit, the night that Imam Ali, peace be upon him, slept in the place of Rasulullah in his house in Mecca. That is so going back to the timeline, on the Rabiul Awwal of year first, the first night was when the Hijrah happened. And so the Hijrah was not directly toward the Medina directly, as you see that in this green path, which was the path of the trajectory of Rasulullah's Hijrah. He went southward to do kind of deceiving the polytheists. He went southward to the mountain of Thawr. And there, and there's a story, like, you know, he saw the night of Hijrah, was leaving, he saw Abu Bakr ibn Abi Rafa, and he took himself to that mountain of Thawr. So they stayed there for 3 nights, and then they took this path, the green path, all the way to the Medina. And as you see, the general path for caravans to go from Mecca to Medina was the red path, but the green path, so it was like a zigzag that Rasulullah took like back and forth in the opposite direction to not like coincide with the caravans or for the Meccans, which could be a threat to him. And so that was the cool mountain of Thor. I don't go to the much of the details what happened, and there was where Imam Ali, he was already arranged about the destination of the mountain. So Imam Ali and also the son of one of like the Imams, the Prophet's servant, they brought some camels for them there, and they took the camel and went toward Rasulullah and Abu Bakr took camels and went toward Medina, and they stayed in this small village of Quba. And today in the Medina, there's a Masjid al-Quba. Now it's part of the big Medina, but Medina or Yasrib was few villages at the time. It was not a city, and the Quba was also like a small village which was few miles away from Medina. Okay, having that said, as I said, we have in the late, there was a like terror for the killing of the Prophet Muhammad, as I said, in the late Safar, and on the first night of Rabiul Awwal, the migration happened, and which we have the Laylatul Mabit, as you see here. Imam Ali sleeps in the Prophet's bed. And in the second night of Rabiul Awwal, Imam Ali meets the Prophet in the cave of Thor, to bring and also brings camel for him. And there are also verses that later, years later, during Medina years, that refer to those like days and nights and events. I don't go to the detail, like we have الناس من يشري نفسه ابتغاء مرضات الله والله رؤوف بالعباد, which is about Laylatul Mabit, about Imam Ali's sacrifice. And there is a verse of Ghar, Ayatul Ghar, 40, which I don't go to the detail of that. It's a separate topic, but that happened during those 3 nights of the Ghar nights, the cave nights. And on the night of 4th of Rabiul Awwal, the Prophet left the cave, and at the same time, this is also important, Imam Ali took the Fawatim. This is like, and all I am saying is from Sunni and Shia sources together. There's nothing in particular. That on the 4th night of Rabiul Awwal, he took the Fawatim, which means the Fatimas. A couple of Fatimas to Imam Ali with some camels toward, because it was already arranged with the Prophet, toward Medina. I will talk about the detail later. So who were these Fatimas or the Fawatim? One was Fatima to Zahra, Salamullah alayha, and the other was Fatima bint Asad, Imam Ali's mother. And at the time, you know, Fatima, Lady Fatima was not the wife of was not the wife of Imam Ali. They married like a year and a half after. So the other Fatima was the son of the grandchild of Abdul Muttalib. So it was the Fatima bint Zubair ibn Abdul Muttalib. So that Zubair is not that Zubair that we know. That's actually, that Zubair is actually the uncle of the Zubair that we know. So this is a different Zubair. It was one of the sons of Abdul Muttalib. And he was also the wife of Miqdad ibn Aswad. So it was like a grand companion, which was one of the 4 top companions after Rasulullah. You know about Salman, Abu Zar, and like the Miqdad and also Ammar. These were like the 4 companions that stood strongly with Imam Ali also after the first days after Rasulullah. So the other person who accompanied them was Ayman, which was the son of Ayman. So it was a he, not a she. So Ayman was which was the son of Ayman, who herself was the servant of Lady Amina, and after that she was kind of taking care of Rasulullah until she got old. So like he was like a family person, was the son of the servant of the family of Rasulullah. And he became later in the Ghazwatul Hunayn, he became a martyr. So Ayman was one of the Sahabas, one of the companions who became martyrs. So he was at a very high status. That was accompanying, because as I said, it was like kind of part of the family. And the Ayman, also the mom. So these are the names that Imam Ali brought them in. So having that said, we have these Imam talking these 5 figures with himself, and there was big troubles also. So not only the risk was of sleeping in the Prophet's bed, you know the story from like elementary school, but also there was a problem during the past, because the Mushrikeen, the polytheists, attacked this small caravan of 5 or 6 people, and Imam Ali fought with them and even killed one of them, according to some narrations, so that they got frightened and left the caravan alone. So that Imam like almost single-handedly could bring this all from the night of like which was the 4th of Rabiul Awwal, all the way took like 1 week to reach the Quba, which was again arranged with it was arranged with Rasulullah. So the Apostle of Allah entered to the Quba, and it was there are many details in the Sirah that he was the guest of like Bani Amr family, and the Quba, as I said, was a village, and it was 2 miles southwest of Medina. And even today, from the Masjid al-Quba to Masjid al-Nabi is like a half an hour walk. I haven't been in Medina yet, but I just know that from like the facts. Okay, on the Friday of the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, on that morning, Imam Ali and the Fatimas joining Quba to the Rasulullah. One thing that happened, like there was some. The Rasulullah was waiting in Quba, was like Abu Bakr, Abi Quhafa wanted to enter Medina earlier, but what Rasulullah said that I need to stay to wait for Ali, because I arranged with him that way, but Abu Bakr decided to go earlier, so he left the Quba, and so by the time that on Friday that Imam Ali and the Fatimas joined Rasulullah, they were the ones who went together as a group, as a small group together to the city of, the main Medina, a couple of villages. So there was, as I said, more detail about who were the entering. So that now we are reaching this moment of the 12th of the Rabiul Awwal, which is the end. This is a magnificent life moment in the human history. And what is that? It's the Hijrah actually happening. And the figures that are entering Medina, I said, is with camels, is Rasulullah, is Imam Ali, is like Fatima to Zahra, Fatima bint Asad, and there were like 3 other figures, Ayman, the other Fatima. And in that moment, it could be some prophecies from biblical, like a Hebrew prophet, like Isaiah, we call in Persian and Arabic, Ash'ia Nabi, I guess you all have heard the name, is one of the Anbiya Bani Israel or Hebrew prophets. In chapter 21, in like verse 7, so he's just kind of telling to the Bani Israel that behold and be aware and about this, and he will see mounted men, horsemen in pairs, which is rider and asses, means like means like olah or hamar, and riders on camels, and he will listen closely, most attentively. It's just kind of warning the Jews to kind of these people who are coming to you to greet them. And I mean, it's both in Christian parts, like the person who is on the writing on an ass or a hamar, it was defined as Jesus, because Jesus, when it came to Beitul Maqdis or Beitul Muqaddas or Jerusalem, he was sitting on a hamar going toward, and people like Jews or some of them started to greet him. And this moment happened one more time during the time of Rasulullah, that they were kind of vague, expecting a man coming from camel, according at least to the Muslims and Muslim exegetes, even like Sirah ibn Hisham, or very early on, the first 1 or 2 third centuries, they are talking about that moment. This is a painting from Tabriz, Iran, from 7 centuries ago. It's part of the book of Abu Rayhan Biruni is portrayed. And here Isaiah sitting on a fortification and seeing these like 2 prophets are coming. So the one is the Isa and the other is Muhammad, peace be upon them. Anyway, so but this moment that is happening is there are some details if there are camel or camels. There's a long discussions in like the biblical studies. Apparently, it was a 1 camel, and gradually the text was deformed or just tempered to become camels. But it still doesn't matter, because if we keep it as camels, because we have multiple figures entering the Medina, and they are sitting on different camels. So this is an important milestone, because if this is the case, that this Isaiah's prophecy referred to this moment, we have manifestation of that prophecy happening with Rasulullah and his very close Ahlul Bayt, Rasulullah and Imam Ali and Lady Fatima, and again the other figures, Fatima bint Asad, and like other very faithful, great people, and also Ayman, who was a martyr of later to the Battle of Hunayn. That these such grand figures are kind of accompanying Rasulullah. So that's see the prophecies fulfilled by Rasulullah himself and also his Ahlul Bayt. So 3 figures out of the 5 figures of the Ahlul Qissa, you know, the Ahlul Qissa, the 5 figures, 3 figures, the other 2 are not born yet, right? Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are not born yet. The other 3 that are there are happening to be the fulfillment of this Isaiah's prophecy. And the Isaiah's book of Isaiah goes back to the 8th century BC. So like means that 27 centuries or 28 centuries before, so by the time would be like 13 centuries before what is happening. If it was prophesied to this, is like it's very significant prophecy, at least for Christians and Muslims. So I had other verses I didn't go through. And also one topic about like this kind of beholding that Isaiah asks is, asked like the Jews to follow, was one of the motivations for them to go to Arabia, because I didn't read the other verses. Let's see, let's read one more verse. Okay, so but there, and this verse, but another verse gives clues for the Jews to go toward Arabia, and you know that there is. I don't want to go. It's a different topic about Paran or land of Paran or Faran, and also Taima, which is you see in the map. When this is Mecca, this is Medina, and this is Khaybar. This is Taima. These are the parts from all over northern Medina, where like the Jewish residents, and the reason they're coming all the way from Palestine and everywhere to this part of that, it can be like argued that was through these biblical prophecies. So you see on the part of Isaiah, it says the oracle, means like kind of prophecy or revelation about Arabia. In the ticket of Arabia, you must spend the night, O caravans of the Dedanites. So it calls them, and meet the thirsty with water. You will dwell in the land of Tema. That means that you will or you should live in the land of Tema. And the Tema, this is, I'm talking about Bible. And what is Tema is Taima, it's here. So you see that how Jews looking at the Bible or the Hebrew Bible to do their decisions. And great the fugitive with bread, for they have fled before swords. So this could be when some Muslims say that this could be like the hijrah of the Muslims from Mecca, because they're fugitives and they ask for, they don't have food, they're very in a misery, they just fleeing Mecca to Medina. So it asked the Jews, you need to host them, for they have fled before swords, before the whetted sword, before the bow, and was drawn before the stress of war. For thus my Lord has said to me, Isaiah says, in another year fixed like the years of a hired laborer, all the splendor of Kedar shall vanish. So Kedar is one of the 12 sons of Ishmael or Ismail alayhi salam, and between Arabic we say Kedar. So it is, it's also named as in the Bible too. And it says that Kedar has a very direct connection with Quraysh because they were kind of descendant from that path. And they say that this kind of the glory and the splendor of the Kedarites or the Quraysh which vanished, which some like Muslims say this can be referred to the Battle of Badr, which was many of the top commanders of Quraysh, the polities of Quraysh were killed. The remaining bows of Kedar's warriors shall be few in number, so their power decline. For the Lord, the God of Israel, has spoken. Okay, so what I did in this talk, I hope it was short. The timeline of Hijrah was shown and proposed, discussed. The blessed prophet and his household entered Medina together. This is important because we've never taught in the school. We just hear about just Hijrah and that happened. How did it happen? The detail, we are never taught in the school. It happened with the Ahlul Bayt. I talked about the Hebrew Bibles, Isaiah chapter 21, that it may pronounce this divine point in history. And there were other verses about other prophets. I talked about Timon, Mount Paran, that I stopped talking about. So that was 2 moments. So it was not my discovery or anything, but the novelty of my part was to connecting, like my talk, I hope it was to connect one, like biblical prophecy, like as I said, it was discussed for centuries by Muslims, and also some historical detail about this Hijrah, how it happened, and who were the figures that were fulfilling the prophecy. And also, let's even forget about the biblical prophecy, about this historical moment of human history, which is the year of Hijrah. What was the details of that Hijrah, which was happening through like the Rasulullah and the Prophet, and also the few close figures. And also other important, because these days we talk the topic of not only this in this era, also in one way the concept of like women and women in religion, especially the formative years of religions, is getting very important in early Judaism and in early Christianity and early Islam. So we are kind of women who are marginalized. We don't hear much about them historically because through men or through like teachings or like maybe for different purposes. And also in these days we have this, at least in Iran, we have the concept of like women's and the more portray of women, and also paying attention to the like women studies getting more important. This is the part that like that biblical prophecy, or even forgetting about that, this landmark in human history happening by 3 men and 4 women. So the men are Rasulullah and Imam Ali and Ayman for that moment of entrance. But we have, I just counted 4 women or 5 women, 4 Fatimas. I don't want to count them again. So 3 Fatimas, or 4 Fatimas, and also Ayman. So we have 4 women and 3 men. Let's say if there were 7 together, these are entering on that 12th of Rabiul Awwal, the glorious day, to the city of, or the complex of villages of Medina. So that was, this is very important to bring out the women of early Islam more to the relevance, and also bringing to the surface kind of the concept and or the history of mentioning of women in early Islam. So not only about their mentioning, but also their status. These are all neglected and marginalized subjects. So with the salawat upon Muhammad and Al Muhammad, I finish my talk. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. So yeah, we can have like a few minutes Q&A questions. If we can have any, the persons in the room and also the persons online, if you have any questions and comments, we will benefit. Otherwise, we will move forward to the next part of the program. Okay, let's finish with the salawat on Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.